Rosco the cottontail bunny looked at the clock, which wasn't something he often did. He looked down at his mug of tea, then glanced at the clock again. He was expecting a visitor, an old friend from the city who he hadn't seen for some considerable time. He had set out an extra mug by the blue and white striped teapot and filled the kettle with water. Biscuits were in the tin, and a ginger and apple cake sat in the larder, ready to be sliced and placed on his best porcelain plates. City bunnies liked their cake on good porcelain plates. Outside, the cobbled country lane stretched toward the village square, warm and almost hazy in the afternoon light. It was the sort of light that made even a familiar sight, like the cobbled lane, feel like it was waiting for something. Rosco glanced at the clock once more, then tried hard not to again. "He'll be along soon," Caratina said. Caratina was sitting at the kitchen table, where she was slicing bread into generous, uneven pieces. Berry was arranging a small dish of butter curls, each one scraped carefully and rounded into shape. Millie Moonbeam had opened the window a little wider, letting in the sound of birds and the distant clatter of a bicycle somewhere down the lane. Floyd looked up from his building blocks. "He does like to be on time," he said. "Yes," Rosco agreed. "That's very Pikelette." The knock came exactly when it ought to have. Not loud, not timid, just 3 neat taps, evenly spaced. Rosco opened the door. Pikelette stood on the step with his travelling bag at his feet, his coat brushed smooth and his ears set just so. He smiled at once, polite, relieved the journey was over, and pleased to have arrived exactly when expected. "Rosco," he said, "how delightful to see you, old bean." Behind him, the village murmured gently, as though it had delivered him and was satisfied. "You're very welcome," Rosco said. "Do come in. We've been looking forward to seeing you." Pikelette stepped inside, pausing only long enough to place his bag neatly by the wall. He took in the cottage with happy and attentive eyes. The small oak table with a thin vase holding a single daffodil, the view of the front garden through the window, and the brass hooks by the door. Comforting and familiar things, but different from his own hallway. "This is very homely," he said. "It feels cosy, but bright at the same time." "That's the cottage," Berry said cheerfully. "It does homely rather well." They settled Pikelette in easily. His coat was hung up on a brass hook, and his bag brought up to his room. The kettle, which had been waiting patiently for a purpose, was given one at last. Pikelette accepted his mug of steaming tea with both paws. "I brought currant buns," he said, producing a small, tidy parcel. "From the bakery, near the watchmaker's shop. They have cinnamon in them, and just a hint of nutmeg." "Oh, that's very kind," said Caratina. "We'll have those later, after dinner." Pikelette nodded, reassured, and took a careful sip of tea. They nattered happily about all the things they had been a-doing of. City life and countryside, and all things in between. During a brief pause in their conversation, as though ticking something quietly off a list, Pikelette asked, "So, may I ask, what are we having for dinner?" The question hovered. It didn't quite float down to the table. It wasn't a very big ask, just curious. Rosco smiled. "I don't know yet," he said. Pikelette blinked. "Oh," he said, not disappointed, just adjusting. "Right. Will you know soon?" Rosco thought for a moment. "We'll see what's in the vegetable patch." There was a pause. Not awkward, simply a space where Pikelette placed the idea down and turned it over in his paws. "I see," he said slowly. "So dinner depends on what's growing and what's not." "Yes," said Millie Moonbeam, "it often does." Pikelette nodded again. He took another sip of his tea. His whiskers twitched, just slightly. "You see," he said, kindly, as though explaining something about himself, "where I live, things are usually decided a bit earlier." Rosco knew this already, of course. Pikelette lived in the city, above the watchmaker's shop, near the tram stop, a place where time ticked and chimed and arrived exactly when expected. He spent his days among tiny cogs that clicked and hands that ticked, working with nimble, patient fingers. Lunch came at the same hour, and dinner followed neatly on time, come rain or come shine. Pikelette and Rosco had met some time ago, on the village green by the sea, when Pikelette had been on holiday. Rosco had been visiting Auntie Reenie Nectarine then, who lived on the green and knew everyone and everything worth knowing within 3 fields of her cottage. Pikelette had been sitting on a bench with an ice cream that was melting faster than he'd planned, and Rosco had sat beside him, and they'd begun to talk. They talked about the sound of the waves and about time, and about how different places asked different things of you. Since then, they'd written letters to each other and had become good friends. And now Pikelette was here. "Would you like to see the garden?" Rosco asked. "Yes, please," Pikelette said at once. "That would be nice." They stepped outside together. The vegetable patch lay at the end of the stone path near the apple tree. Leaves of different greens and all shapes and sizes bobbed and dipped in the light breeze. The smell of earth rose gently as Floyd looped a pea shoot around a cane, so tomorrow it would find the sun with no trouble at all. "These peas look plumptious and ready for shelling," Floyd said. "And the tomatoes," said Caratina. "They won't wait much longer. They're brimming with sunshine." Berry pinched a sprig of basil between his paws and held it out to Pikelette. "Do have a sniff and a nibble," he said. Pikelette leaned in. "Oh, heaven! he felt his shoulders relax and lower just a little. "That's the most fragrant fragrance that's tickled my whiskers," he said. "How divine." Rosco smiled. "So," Pikelette ventured, "we might have something with peas." "Possibly," Rosco said. "Well," Pikelette replied, "that's something to work with." Back inside, the afternoon continued to loosen its hold. The bunnies pottered easily, washing, slicing, setting things out without a fuss. Pikelette stood looking at first, paws behind his back. Then he found small things to do: drying up a bowl, passing a cloth, standing back when standing back felt right. Every now and then he glanced at the clock, but with each glance more time had passed than the last. Dinner, when it arrived, felt neither early nor late. It simply arrived. They ate together slowly. Peas with herby leaves of basil, juicy red tomatoes, still warm from the afternoon sun, and bread from Nash's bakery, spread with buttery curls. All this was washed down with elderflower cordial, sipped contentedly through curly straws. Pikelette tasted everything carefully, savouring each bite. "This," he said at last, smiling and gesturing with his fork, "is very different from knowing ahead of time what you will be having for dinner, and I must say that I like it. It feels more special somehow." Later, as the light softened and the day folded itself away, Pikelette sat by the window with his mug, watching the garden settle. "I might not ask quite so many when questions tomorrow," he said. Rosco smiled. "You can ask them," he said. "They just might not need an answer straight away." Pikelette considered this. "That seems fair." Upstairs, the beds waited, patchwork quilts folded back, ready to be tucked under chinnigans. Outside, the evening breathed out slowly. All was snug. All was well. Night-night.